My fiancé's family insulted my mother during dinner and called us porso. I ended the engagement publicly and bought the restaurant they couldn't afford. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and I thought I'd finally found my forever person. Her name was Lily Radiant, charming, and the kind of woman who made every room feel lighter when she walked in. We met through mutual friends at a charity event. I was there helping with logistics. She was attending with her family. While most people there barely noticed me, Lily did. She laughed at my dry jokes, asked questions about my work, and said she admired people who built things with their own hands. It felt genuine, like she saw the person beneath the paycheck. We started dating soon after. She worked in marketing, came from money, and yet she never acted like it mattered. When I told her my dad passed when I was 15 and that my mom raised me alone, she said, "That makes you strong, not poor." I held on to that line for months. It made me believe class didn't matter to her. Our engagement was simple but perfect. I proposed at a small park where we had our first picnic, just the two of us. A modest ring and the sound of the wind through the trees. She cried, said yes, and kissed me like I'd just handed her the world. When we celebrated with our families later, her parents smiled, but I could feel the chill behind their politeness. Her mother's handshake lingered just long enough to remind me I wasn't their kind. Her father asked about my business, his tone flat, calculating. I brushed it off. Love would bridge that gap, I was sure of it. As I watched Lily that night, her hand in mine, I told myself people could change. I just didn't realize I'd be the only one trying. A few weeks after the engagement, Lily's parents invited me and my mother to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. They called it a formal family introduction, and for a moment, I actually believed it meant they wanted to welcome us. My mom was thrilled. She spent the whole day preparing, steaming her favorite navy dress, fixing her hair just right, and polishing the small silver pendant my dad gave her before he passed. I remember how she looked before we left, elegant in her own quiet way. I felt proud walking beside her. The restaurant was the kind of place that whispered wealth. Polished marble floors, soft piano music, waiters who spoke in hushed tones. I could tell my mom felt out of place, but she smiled anyway. "They'll love you," I whispered as we followed the host to the table. Lily's parents stood as we approached. Her mother air-kissed my mom's cheek, then immediately looked her up and down. "How lovely," she said, her tone dripping with politeness that didn't reach her eyes. Her father gave me a firm handshake, the kind meant to establish hierarchy, not connection. We ordered dinner, and the small talk began. At first, it was bearable, polite questions about work and family. But soon, her father leaned forward and asked, "So, how much does your company actually make?" His words hit like a spotlight. I tried to keep my voice steady as I answered vaguely, but I could see the judgment flicker across his face. Her mother chimed in next, complimenting my mom's pendant before adding, "It's so simple, vintage, I suppose." Lily laughed nervously, changing the subject, but the damage was done. I felt the walls closing in, the clinking of glasses, the low murmurs around us, and for the first time, I felt small. Not because of who I was, but because of who they made me feel I wasn't. The first few minutes after the food arrived felt deceptively calm. My mom tried to keep conversation light, complimenting the decor and asking Lily's parents about their travels. But I could sense something shifting, a smugness in the air that made my skin crawl. Her father swirled his wine, leaned back, and asked my mom about her work. When she proudly said she taught part-time at a local school, his lips curled. "That's admirable," he said, as though charity work had just been mentioned. Lily's mother added with a laugh, "It's rare these days to see someone so traditional. You must really enjoy simple living." My mom just smiled, unaware of the insult, but I felt my hands tightening around my fork. Lily stayed quiet, eyes flicking between her parents and me. I gave her a look, the kind that begged for backup, but she just shifted uncomfortably and forced a smile. The conversation only got worse. Her father started reminiscing about how hard it is to find people with proper taste these days, his gaze pointedly sweeping over my mom's modest outfit. Her mother chuckled, adding, "Some people just aren't raised around refinement. It's not their fault." My mom excused herself to the restroom, still smiling politely, and that's when her father leaned in. His voice dropped low, smooth like poison. "I'll be honest, son, You'll never fit into our world. You're from a different class, and love doesn't change blood." I froze. Lily's nervous laugh cut through the silence like a blade. "Dad, please," she whispered. But it sounded more like a performance than protest. I felt my stomach twist, humiliation burning deeper than anger. I wanted to shout, but the weight of their condescension pinned me down. When my mom returned, cheerful and unaware, I forced a smile. She thanked them for dinner, as though nothing was wrong. Watching her kindness meet their cruelty broke something in me. That was the moment I realized the family I was supposed to marry into had just disrespected the only person who ever truly loved me. I spent the rest of that dinner wearing a mask, smiling when I needed to, nodding at the right moments, pretending not to hear the venom hiding behind their polite laughter. My mother sat beside me, blissfully trying to hold the evening together. Every time she spoke, I could see Lily's mother's thin smile tightened like she was enduring charity work. And Lily, she just sat there, avoiding my eyes. Her silence screamed louder than their insults. When dessert arrived, the tension had curdled into something heavy and suffocating. The waiter set down delicate slices of cheesecake, and her mother said, almost sweetly, "Well, I suppose this evening went better than expected. It's not every day that someone from your kind marries up, dear." The table went still. My fork froze midair. My mother blinked, as though trying to process whether she'd heard correctly. The smile slipped from her face, replaced by something small and trembling. She whispered, "Excuse me," and reached for her purse. I saw her fingers shake as she stood. I stood too. "We're leaving," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Lily's father raised an eyebrow, unconcerned. Lily finally opened her mouth. "Wait, we can talk about this," but I was already helping my mom into her coat. She didn't speak as we walked out, just kept her head low, her shoulders trembling. Outside, the night air hit like a slap, cold, clean, unforgiving. My mother tried to smile, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. Let's just go home." But I could see the tears glinting in her eyes under the streetlight as I opened the car door for her. I felt something inside me snap, quiet but final. If love means watching my mother be humiliated, I thought, then I'm not the man I thought I was. The drive home felt endless. The city lights blurred through the windshield, streaks of gold and white bleeding into the darkness. My mother sat in the passenger seat, hands folded in her lap, staring out the window. For a long time, neither of us said a word. Then, in a voice so soft I almost missed it, she said, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I shouldn't have come. I must have embarrassed you." That sentence crushed me. I slammed my hands tighter on the steering wheel, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Mom, stop. You didn't do anything wrong." But she only shook her head, her reflection in the glass shimmering under the streetlights. "They're not wrong, you know," she whispered. "People like them. They live differently. Maybe she'll come around." Her kindness made it worse. She was still giving them grace after they'd torn her down. I wanted to tell her everything her future in-laws had said after she left the table. But I couldn't. It would break her heart. So I just said, "You were perfect tonight," and hoped my voice didn't tremble. The rest of the ride was swallowed by silence, heavy, suffocating silence. My mind replayed the dinner like a cruel film reel, her father's sneer, her mother's smug laughter, and Lily's silence. That silence cut deeper than any insult. She could have stopped it. She could have defended us, but she didn't. When I dropped my mom off, she hugged me tightly before walking inside. I sat in the car long after she disappeared behind the door, staring at the empty passenger seat where she'd sat trying to smile through humiliation. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, torn between ending the engagement or pretending everything was fine. By morning, I decided to give Lily one last chance to prove she cared enough to say sorry. The next morning, my phone buzzed with Lily's name flashing across the screen. For a moment, I hoped she'd call to apologize. Maybe she'd realized how cruel her parents had been. But when I picked up, her voice was light, cheerful. "Hey, last night went great, didn't it?" I sat there in stunned silence. "You think that went great?" I finally said. "They insulted my mom, Lily. They called her old-fashioned and mocked her." "You didn't say a word," she sighed. The kind of sigh people use when they think you're being unreasonable. "You're overreacting," she said. "They were just joking. My dad can be blunt sometimes, but he didn't mean anything by it." You have to stop being so sensitive." That line hit harder than any insult her parents threw. It wasn't just that she'd stayed silent, she'd accepted it, normalized it, turned it into something I was supposed to laugh off. My chest tightened as I tried to steady my voice. "Lily, there's a difference between being blunt and being cruel. They humiliated my mother, and you stood there." Her tone turned cold. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but my parents are who they are. You need to understand how people in my world communicate. Maybe your family just isn't ready for our lifestyle." For a moment, everything inside me went still. I could hear the faint hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, tiny sounds in a room suddenly too loud. I realized then that the woman I thought I'd marry saw kindness as weakness, humility as embarrassment, and my mother's decency as something beneath her. "Or maybe," I said quietly, "I'm not ready for yours." And before she could answer, I hung up, the click echoing like the end of something sacred. Weeks passed in a fog of avoidance. Lily kept her distance, and so did I. I thought it was over until I got the formal invitation in the mail, an engagement dinner hosted by her parents. The same restaurant, the same table. It felt less like celebration and more like a test. I almost threw the card away, but something in me refused to let them control the ending. If this was going to end, it would end on my terms. When I walked in that night, the place glittered with excess crystal chandeliers, imported wine, floral arrangements taller than most guests. It wasn't a dinner. It was a statement. Everyone was dressed like they were attending a royal event, their conversations laced with subtle judgment and gossip. I could already hear the whispers. "He's the guy from the working class family, the one marrying into money." Lily greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her parents floated around the room like royalty, basking in the attention. When the toasts began, her father stood, glass raised high. "Tonight," he said, "we celebrate not just love, but the merging of success and legacy. A union that reminds us of what ambition can achieve." His eyes landed on me, and sometimes how far one can rise when given the right opportunities. The guests laughed softly, polite but knowing. I didn't flinch. I just sat there, listening to the clinking glasses, watching the performance unfold. Lily laughed along, even placed her hand on mine as if nothing was wrong, a perfect actress in a perfect lie. It hit me then. This wasn't love. It was a transaction, a performance for her family's ego, a show to prove they could elevate someone like me. I leaned back, feeling oddly calm as the noise swelled around me. If they wanted a show, I thought I'd give them one dot, as the laughter and clinking glasses filled the room. I felt strangely detached, like I was watching a movie I'd already seen too many times. Lily's father finished his self-congratulatory toast, and the guests applauded politely. That was my cue. I stood up, glass in hand, forcing a smile. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice calm but steady. It means a lot to celebrate with everyone who values love, respect, and family. The room quieted a little. I saw Lily glance at me, unsure of where I was going with this. I took a deep breath. You know, family means everything to me, especially my mother, the woman who raised me alone after my father passed. She taught me dignity, humility, and kindness. I paused, letting my words hang in the air. Unfortunately, not everyone here seems to understand those values. The sound of forks hitting plates echoed like gunshots. I continued, voice still even. "During our last dinner, my fiancé's parents called my mother old-fashioned, mocked her clothes, and said I should be grateful to marry up. And Lily," I looked directly at her, "you said nothing." A hush swept through the room. Lily's face drained of color, her hand trembling around her champagne glass. Her father's expression hardened. "That's enough," he snapped. But I didn't stop. "I won't marry into a family that disrespects the woman who taught me what real class is," I said firmly. "If success means forgetting where I came from, then I'd rather stay poor." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lily's mother looked mortified, her father red with fury, but I didn't care. I placed my glass on the table, nodded politely, and walked out. No shouting, no chaos, just quiet, deliberate finality. Behind me, whispers and stunned silence filled the room. For once, the noise wasn't at my expense. The story of that night spread faster than wildfire. Within a week, the entire social circle that once whispered about my lucky break was now gossiping about the scene I'd caused. Lily's family, of course, tried to rewrite the narrative. According to them, I had a temper. I was insecure about money. I'd embarrassed them out of jealousy. And Lily, she stayed quiet, letting the story twist until I became the villain. But I didn't respond, not once. I deleted the messages, ignored the rumors, and focused on the only person who'd ever stood by me, my mother. She never asked for details, but she knew. She saw the exhaustion in my eyes and the quiet ache in my voice when I said, "It's over." Something changed in me after that. The anger that once burned turned into fuel. I threw myself into my work, staying late, taking risks, building connections. Every ounce of humiliation I'd felt at that dinner table became energy I refused to waste on bitterness. I wanted success not for revenge, but for redemption. Despite the pain, I felt strangely free. No more pretending to fit into a world that measured worth by wealth. No more silencing myself to make others comfortable. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Still, every morning on my drive to work, I passed that same restaurant, the one with the polished glass windows and golden sign that once made me feel small. I'd glance at it for a second, feeling the sting rise up again, but not as shame this time. As motivation. One day, I promised myself I'd walk through those doors not as a guest, not as an outsider, but as someone who owned his name, his story, and maybe, just maybe, the place itself. Months passed, and life began to shift. The same determination that once held me together now started to pay off. My small construction company, which had barely scraped by a year ago, landed a major partnership with a real estate developer. Suddenly, my days were full of client meetings, contracts, and expansion plans. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't surviving, I was building. One afternoon, while reviewing potential commercial properties for a client, my business partner mentioned a location that had just gone on the market. "It's that fancy place downtown," he said casually, "the one with the marble floors and overpriced steak." My heart stopped. That restaurant, curiosity or maybe, fate pulled me there that same evening. The moment I stepped inside, I was hit by déjà vu. The scent of polished wood, the faint hum of piano music hit, all came flooding back. I could still see my mother sitting at that table, smiling through their cruelty. But this time, the sting wasn't there. Just calm, the owner, a tired-looking man in his 50s, greeted me warmly. Business had slowed, he explained. Too many expenses, not enough regulars. He handed me the financials, and as I scanned them, a strange sense of irony washed over me. The same place that once made me feel small was now struggling to stay alive. A week later, the paperwork was ready. As I sat in the office, signing the final document, I felt something click into place, a quiet symmetry. A chapter closing the way it was meant to. I stood up, pen still in hand, and looked out the window at the restaurant's glowing sign. "Now," I whispered to myself, voice steady, "it's my table." And for the first time, the words didn't feel like revenge. They felt like peace. The grand reopening felt surreal. The restaurant that once symbolized humiliation now pulsed with quiet elegance, sleek new lighting, soft jazz, and warm-toned decor that made everyone feel comfortable, not intimidated. I had redesigned it to reflect everything I'd learned. Class wasn't about status, it was about respect. On opening night, I reserved a special table, the same one where it all began. This time, my mother sat across from me, dressed in a soft cream blouse and her favorite silver pendant. Her eyes shimmered as she looked around, taking in the transformation. "It's beautiful," she whispered, voice trembling. I smiled. "It's yours as much as mine, Mom." Dinner was perfect. Laughter, comfort, peace. For the first time, she was being served in the very place she once felt small. When dessert arrived, she reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Your father would have been proud," she said softly. And for a moment, I felt the weight of every struggle lift. Then, as if fate had a sense of irony, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in months. "Table for 3, a hostess called from the front." I turned and froze, Lily and her parents. They hadn't recognized me yet, but my staff, trained with professionalism, led them to a table with polite smiles. They looked around, clearly impressed by the new design, unaware of whose hands had built it. Midway through their meal, the hostess came to me. "They're asking to speak with the owner," she said quietly. I stood, straightened my jacket, and walked out. The moment their eyes met mine, time seemed to stop. Lily's fork slipped from her hand. Her father's expression went pale. Her mother's fake smile evaporated. I stopped beside their table, calm and steady. "Welcome back," I said evenly. "Dinner's on the house." Their silence said everything words never could. They stayed frozen for a moment after my words, and I could almost see the calculation flicker across their faces, the desperate scramble to recover some dignity. Lily's father finally forced a brittle laugh. "Well, this is unexpected," he muttered, adjusting his cufflinks. Her mother smiled too brightly, trying to act unfazed. Lily, though, just stared at me, silent, eyes wide, realizing the balance had shifted completely. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. "I hope everything was to your liking," I said with quiet professionalism. "If there's anything else you need, my staff will be happy to help." My tone was polite, almost gentle, but the calm was deliberate, the kind that made them squirm. Throughout their meal, I checked in once or twice, never lingering, never smug. My composure did the work for me. The same table that once witnessed their cruelty now bore witness to their discomfort. My mother watched from our corner table, her expression soft but knowing. When they finished, I personally brought the bill. I placed it face down beneath their dessert plate and walked away without a word. Only after they left did my hostess retrieve it, and that's when she saw what I'd written on the note attached, paid in full by the man you called poor. My mother smiled when she heard, a quiet, proud smile that said everything words couldn't. She didn't need revenge, but she understood why this mattered. As the last guests left and the staff began cleaning, I turned off the lights one by one. The restaurant fell into a warm hush. The same space that once echoed with humiliation now hummed with peace. Standing by the door, keys in hand, I looked back one final time. Revenge isn't always loud, I thought. Sometimes it's served with grace and a receipt. Then I locked up, the quiet clicking sound marking not an ending, but a reclamation.